Ready in 5, 4, 3.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Full Sail University's audio production town hall, our first since the pandemic. So welcome back, everybody. My name is Monique Mason. I'm a course director here in the audio arts program. I teach fundamentals of music business. And today I have the honor and the privilege to interview Ms. Kim Lumpkin. And Kim is from Bloom Entertainment, where she manages artists such as D'Angelo and Tribe Called Quest. She also does some A&R and other services that she provides, which we're going to talk to her about. And she's also the CEO and co-founder of Kismet, which I can't wait for her to explain that a little bit. So I'm going to ask her some questions about those two endeavors. And she wears a whole bunch of other hats. So welcome, Kim. Thank you very much for making time for us today.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. Hi, everyone.
So you're currently in New York, correct?
I am, yes.
Okay,
yes.
But you're from Los Angeles, so you're a California girl.
Yes, I am from LA. Yep. But I've been here. I've spent my entire music career in New York. So,
okay.
Yeah. So
we're going to do a quick summary or run through your history and your background so we can talk about how you got to where you are today. So you're from Los Angeles and you graduate high school and you start college at Howard?
No, I went to Hampton University in Virginia.
Hampton,
yes.
Okay.
So I spent a year there and then had to return, unfortunately, for financial reasons. My parents just were having financial problems at the time. Things had changed dramatically, so I had to come back home. So I went to return to LA. And there, I actually enrolled in a community college in the meantime and started an internship at Fox News at the time, as well as worked as a bank teller. So I was just basically trying to, work and go to school at the same time.
So what was your initial career plan? So, what was it you were planning on doing, and then how and why did that change?
Well, my original plan was to go to school for broadcast journalism. So I wanted to be a news broadcaster. I loved everything about it at the time. And it was just really, it's really what you see, right? So I saw people on television and I thought oh, you know what? That looks fun. I can do that. Let me go to school for that. So it was really as simple as that. And then, once you get out into the world and meet people and, socialize and you find, and you're exposed to other things. And then one of my, best friends and roommate actually was a celebrity hairstylist to musicians and artists. And that's how I got into the music business very early on. So
you start moving in these circles with people who are on their way up in the industry and you decide this is what you want to do.
Yeah, it really happened that way. There was a tour that came into LA and it was actually Salt and Pepper and Heavy D and the Boys. And, my roommate at the time, she was a hairstylist for Salt and Pepper. So I tagged along and, we were all hanging out and I really liked, I just saw the show and I thought it was phenomenal. And I had no point of reference about music or the music business. I just, liked what they did. And I also liked who I was speaking to in the room. And it just so happened that I was actually speaking to really heavy hitters in the room. A guy named Harrell, who ran a record label in New York called Uptown Records. And then one of the band members from Heavy D and the Boys, who was a very big producer at the time. His name was Eddie F. And I was talking to them. I was like, hey, I like this. You guys should give me a job. Someone should give me a job. And it was really as simple as that. And they were like, okay. And, they were like, hey, so, do you have any experience? I'm like, nope. And, would you be willing to move to New York? I was like, yep. And, they were like, okay, well, let me take your phone number. And it was just really simple like that. And I didn't hear from them. I thought I would hear from them a few days later, and that didn't happen. And 6 months later, actually, they called me out of the blue and said like, hey, you interested? You still, and it was Eddie F who called me and he's like, you still interested in the music business? You want to move to New York? And I said, yes. And he's like, will you have a place to stay? And I'm like, sure. And so happened that my roommate was also, she was also New York based. So I basically boarded with her with 4 other women. So it was 5 of us in an apartment, and that's how it started.
Oh my goodness, 4 women
Yeah.
in a New York apartment. That's a whole nother conversation, I'm sure.
Yeah, in Queens.
Oh my goodness. So you start out working as a receptionist, which isn't what you expected when you got out there. And
That's right.
you realize that I'm better. I have way more skills than just being a receptionist. So what was your big break or opportunity from transitioning from receptionist to whatever they put you in next?
Well, I was very disappointed that I was a receptionist because I thought I would just come out and be like, I don't know. At the time, I didn't even know what A&R was. I didn't know what a manager was. I had no kind of clue as to, roles in the music business. But what I knew is like, you know what? I know I'm better than this, being a receptionist, but I really focused on being the best receptionist, right? So I'm like, let me focus on that and get this down and just be amazing at it. And, and let people probably even comment, and compliment, being a receptionist, like, oh, the person that I first spoke to was amazing. And then I also just watched and observed everyone. And of course, in the midst of that, I was also, telling them like, hey, I can do more. I can really do more. Just give me a chance. And I did that like every single day until really an incident happened and someone got fired on the spot. The person who was actually managing all of the producers, it was a company called Untouchables. And we were like, we worked with alongside Uptown Records at the time because we did all of the records for Jodeci and Mary J. Blige and, Heavy D and the Boys, of course, and so many more. So, when that person at Untouchables, she actually managed all of the recording producers and the music producers. She left or got fired, depends on who you speak to, right? And all I know is that right after she stormed out of that door, then they came to me and said, okay, you ready? Your time is up. You want to do something more than being a receptionist? I'm like, yes. And they're like, okay, fill this role, start today. And that's kind of like how I just got thrust into it.
That's just crazy. So what we want to talk about today, and we're going to hit on a bunch of things, but what I want to start with is our conversation about navigating your way as a woman in the industry. And I definitely want to talk about your lack of experience and how you learned and that sort of thing. But being a young woman, so how old would you say you were when this started? 20 something?
Like 20, yeah.
Okay. So you're a young woman at the beginning of your career dealing with heavy hitters in the industry, very strong, rumored, I'm doing air quotes, rumored to be difficult men. How do you, as a woman at that age, with no reference, how do you deal with that?
It was really tough initially because, I moved from LA to New York, which was really a cultural change in a significant way. And then secondly, I was like immersed into hip hop and in New York hip hop, working with, Eddie and also with Andre Harrell at Uptown Records. It was just a totally different environment. Like in LA, I listened to pop music. I also listened to old soul music. My brother used to play a lot of soul music. But, I also listened to Joni Mitchell and, anyone else. Like it was just totally different. So being in that environment, especially, working with producers and being in recording studios was really like overwhelming at first, because, they look at you first as, and we're all young, we're all, 20s and 19 and, everyone was under 30. So everyone, their hormones are crazy. Everyone is just reckless and passionate and very energetic. So it was tough. But, I had to like kind of like fend for myself and grow up. I had to be tough. I had to also, like I told myself, you know what? I have to gain respect with these guys. And how am I going to do that? I just have to like be professional all the time. And, you know, I'm not going to drink when they're drinking in the studio, when they're doing other things in the studio. I just have to like maintain my professionalism, and I just have to know more. And I also have to work harder.
Mm.
And that's really, really, and, you know, when someone would try to like, you know, flirt with me or say something that was, you know, to me disrespectful, I would say something immediately to them. I would either like, you know, and again, it was a really crazy environment. So, you know, there were times that I could pull them to the side, but most times I had to like yell it out to the crowd until a group of guys like, you better stop that. Or, you know, like I would just basically fight back and yell back right then. So it was a very crazy time, but I handled myself. You had to.
It's a challenge because a lot of these companies, these startups, whether it be a record label, a management company, they don't have an HR department for you to go to. They haven't.
Yes.
They haven't developed that. And obviously, as time has gone on, the laws have gotten more strict and that sort of thing. So that you kind of answered what my next question was going to be, which is, what do you recommend women, young women, and women in general in the industry today? How you know, what do you recommend as far as handling those types of situations? Obviously, now you can go to a lawyer. You could have gone to a lawyer back then too, but you know, what are your recommendations? How do we handle that now? Or is there no difference?
I think that now, you know, again, even though I was pretty feisty, many people at the time, you know, even like the female colleagues that I worked with weren't as, you know, as strong-willed as I was at the time and didn't fight back. So I think that, you know, there wasn't a space even when I was there to, you know, just, you know, be polite about it. It's really tough. It's tough now, you know, but I just think that you have to, you know, you know, stand for yourself, you know, although it's incredibly difficult to do, but you just have to, whether you pull someone to the side and just really tell them like, hey, I didn't appreciate what you said or what you did. You know, I just recommend that you just kind of nip it in the bud immediately when you feel uncomfortable about any situation. I didn't do that oftentimes. So I used to like let a lot of stuff like roll off of me or think like, oh, this is the way it is. Or, you know, again, I was dealing with some really incredible artists and really incredible people. And I just wanted to kind of like keep it balanced, but that was the wrong thing to do. You know, look in hindsight, you know, no means no. And, you know, and I shouldn't have to yell or fight or like, you know, throw something across a room, you know, which I used to do to be heard, you know, so it's different. I just think you really need to nip it in the bud immediately if you feel that, you know, that level of, you know, in cooperation or uncooperation. Yeah.
Are there any skills that you think we as women possess inherently that make us an asset in the music industry?
Yeah, a couple. You know, women, we're innately, I think, nurturers. You know, we always want to give and help. I think that that's also what makes me a great manager and also, you know, a great and we're also great listeners, right? In addition to that, I think, well, I'm very organized. Most women are organized, I think, but some even more so. And I certainly fall into that category that I can like, you know, give me, you know, a problem and, you know, just tell me what you need and I will absolutely give you, and I will create steps to do it and to execute it and all of that stuff. So I'm very much into that. And yeah, and nurturing and listening all the time.
So we're good project managers typically.
Very much so. And that was really my career. Like most of my career, it was in A&R, but it was really project managing and I treated it as such. So yeah, I was always organized.
So with that being said, why do you think there is so little representation for us, particularly on the behind the scenes side? So there's an article in The Guardian that came out last January, and it stated that 21.7% of the women in the industry were artists, only 14.4% were songwriters, and 56.4% of the songs that were at the top of the charts had no female songwriters on them, and only 2.6 were female producers. So my question is, do you think there is a legit conspiracy against us as women, or are we just not putting ourselves out there? What do you think?
Huh, that's a tough one. I do believe that it's really just the music people were creatures of habit. And what I found that even, the men, fortunately for me, the people I represent or the people who I worked with were very actually female forward. So, we used female engineers all the time. We had, female producers were hard to come by. And I'm not sure whether it's like something that, that we don't like really pursue. I don't know. But it is really kind of like who you were with. And, it's a very insular and very, it's a very insular community. So if you're like not in the community or if you're not surrounded by other people, then it's, especially women, it's also a tough environment. It really is a tough environment. It's not really, it's raw. It's very raw in studio, so that might be a little challenging for people. But for me, I've always everyone who I work with has always welcomed females. So I don't know if it's a conspiracy or not, because I've actually seen them and with the guys who I've, been surrounded with in my career. It's tough.
What about the community of women itself? Are you finding that women within the community, and by community, I mean the industry, are they supportive? Is it a very competitive kind of culture, or are we supporting each other from what you're seeing?
Yeah, the women, we do support each other. We're actually really happy to see each other when we're together. We're like, oh, good, it's you. Or, oh, you work with him? Oh, this is great. So, you find like immediate camaraderie, just because you're a woman. So that actually is great. But it's still very, challenging. It's still challenging. But I do automatically gravitate to a woman when I see them in a studio, and most times we are like the only two. So, yeah.
And that brings to mind, we talk about how representation matters. It's really important to see not just another woman, but for a lot of us, a woman of color. And you don't hear too many stories. Like you have Sylvia Rohn, and then it's like, okay, well, who else is there? Who else is in that, that upper echelon? And I see some announcements coming out, this person got promoted, that person got promoted, and that sort of thing. But that representation really does make a difference. Do you think seeing more women in the industry would have had some other type of effect on you?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I wish I had the mentorship of women. I had mentorship of men, thankfully, but I wish that, I had the mentorship of women, but there weren't any women that really looked at me in high, positions outside of Sylvia Rohn. So I looked at her from afar, and I used to actually work with her because we also had an artist, a group called Pete Rock and CL Smooth, and they were actually signed under her label. So I had a little bit of interaction with her, and I always admired her, like, wow, if she can do it. And she also had a female group called In Vogue that was they were superstars. And just seeing like Black women that are amazing singers, but also this Black female executive, it really just, I was like, I want to be like her. I really want to be like her. So I used to, from afar, like follow her career and really just try to mirror what she did as far as I thought, or what I thought she did. But yeah, I wish there were, I wish I knew Sylvia, personally at the time, or anyone for that matter, to actually they can kind of like take me under their wing and really kind of guide me and help me navigate this, this industry. In the music industry, it doesn't have, it doesn't have much structure. Even the corporations, it just wasn't built on structure. So you actually have to create your own structure or find people that have structured so you can kind of be led, especially in the beginning. So and that wasn't possible at the time. So I just could like find, look at her from afar and just, really think about emulating her as much as I could.
So that's a great transition into my next question, which is what organizations or clubs or just resources, where do we go as women in the industry, whether it be aspiring engineers, songwriters, producers? Can you give some organizations you think would be good for females to look into?
I know that there are like, I've been part of like the Grammys. They have like, they're definitely, have stepped up with diversity as well as females. I've also like got involved in even like just some of the performance rights associations, like the, ASCAP, and, everyone is trying to do things like that. And as far as organizations, like I do like, women in music. I'm involved in that in my local chapter. But it's not too many. It needs to be more, actually. And Monique, we need to kind of create something. Even like a mentorship program. I love what they're doing with Black Girls Rock, but that's for younger girls. So it would really be nice to have like some type of organization that really nurtures and supports women in the industry. But right now there isn't anything that
we
I
will
know
definitely
of.
work on that. So I'm not going to give away our secrets, but there, just for the audience, there are organizations like Sound Girls that's out there, and we do have a local chapter here. I know in Orlando. So get involved in Sound Girls if you're looking to be more on the engineering side of things, and then. Alicia Keys started an organization called
that's right.
She Is the Music. And that is, to my understanding, for women in all aspects of the industry, particularly songwriting and that sort of thing. So they're slowly creeping up there. But
That's
yeah,
great.
like you said, there really aren't that many specifically for that purpose. So I want to take all of that and now talk about, you went from working for Diddy and Andre Harrell. Now you decide to start your own business. What did it take for you to make that leap of faith to start running your own business? How do you determine your worth that you can just walk away from these industry like legends and start your own business?
It was the hardest decision, yet the best decision. It was the hardest decision because, I didn't really have a solid exit plan. Bad Boy at the time, and I was, head of A&R at Bad Boy with A&R guy named Harv Pierre. And, Bad Boy at the time, we were rocking, but we were also going through a tremendous transition. We were leaving our joint venture partner, and then Puffy was, ready to chart another, course and another path with, at that time, doing things on his own. So I knew that would require like a lot more, responsibility for me, because we wouldn't have our partners that, our label partners at BMG and Arista to support us. So I was just like, oh God, will I be able to handle this workload? It was a tough thing, because also I'm like, I don't think I want to do all of this, right? I don't want to do this, now I already had like, within Bad Boy, I felt like I had like 4 jobs, and then that would increase it to like 10 jobs. And I'm like, oh gosh, I might as well just start my own thing. And purely out of like, I think frustration of that, and just the changes that Bad Boy was going through, I'm like, I can't do this. I just can't. So I left pretty abruptly without having an exit plan, like having another job lined up. But I also needed to go like, you know what, Kim, you've seen him do this, and what makes you any different? Like, what makes you different? He has an exceptional creative mind. He's a genius, but his work ethic, I actually, at Bad Boy, you basically had to like have the same work ethic to, to Puffy, because he was just insane. And to order to keep up, you had to like just do it in order to also excel and really kind of like, give the artists and the team and your staff, your team, you have to give all of it. So I really was into that part of it, but it was really just I also lacked self-confidence, but I had to go, you know what? You can do this. If he can do this, you can do this. You've seen how he speaks to people and, and how he feels so confident in everything he does. You can do it. And he used to always tell us, like, for our artists, like, we've got to believe in the record. We have to believe in the song, because how can we market and promote it or even make the records if we don't believe in that person? So, I thought, you know what? It starts with me. I've got to believe in myself. I really have to like get my confidence. And, I also started thinking like Puffy I was super close to him, his right hand. I was super close to Andre. I was super close to, Dallas Austin when I worked at Rowdy. And I thought, like, it's not coincidence. Like these guys see something in me, so I've got to see it in myself. I know who I am. I've got to believe who I am. And I took it from there, and I took the leap, and it was the best thing that happened.
So talk about discovering your worth, because that's something a lot of my students struggle with, is really determining what their worth is. How do you, how do you tell somebody? How do you teach that to these young people coming up now?
Yeah. Well, first I go back to, even being a woman, and, just us being nurturers and, always taking care of each other's, but it doesn't even, it happens for both men and women, right? You sometimes you are working with someone, but you believe that if you kind of like speak up or do something, then you're being selfish, and it's not for the team, or you feel like you need to quiet yourself. But the best thing I can say is no one's going to value you more than you value yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you don't value yourself, then that's actually going to permeate, and you're going to get that energy back. I really, really do believe that. So I really just wanted to put myself in the category of being very important. And that's how I saw myself. And I, again, this was like baby steps. Initially, I was like, I used to think and put what would Puffy do? He's confident. So let me just pretend I'm him. And I really just, did that every day for the most part. And so I really just built up my confidence and my self-esteem. And I just kept saying that to myself. Yeah.
Okay. So I want to jump to a couple other questions. I know we had so much planned today that we want to talk about. We may have to do a part 2 to this. But I want to ask you your advice for people who are potentially looking for a manager. So when and what should a new professional seek when trying to find a manager? What should they be? What kind of person? How do you even go about that process?
Well, it starts with just being around your environment and your community. I'm guessing like if you're already in the music, community, then you're talking to people, you can, your friends, may know someone, or even like, be helpful as far as like, you just have to look at what kind of skills they have. They may not have any experience, but they may have skills that may be helpful to you, like they may, have relationships with different people, because relationships are, incredibly important as far as like helping you navigate. But it also starts with you. I always tell my artists the same thing, like you've got to want it for yourself, and you've got to like basically look at yourself as a startup before you actually even bring on a manager, right? Mm-hmm. So you've got to put the work in, you've got to understand what you want to do. You have to do all of this work. And then maybe when you get traction of like really just fulfilling and setting goals for yourself. And once you kind of get on a roll, then I think that that's the time to find a manager. And usually when you're doing what you're doing, the environment and those people will actually kind of like pop out and come to you. You'll interact with the people once you're in that music community, and find people that are kind of like-minded and they may even offer help. Like, hey, I can help you with this. So that's what. But again, you have to put in the work first.
So speaking of putting in the work, one of the things that often comes up now is about marketing and branding yourself. Can you give some advice about creating or developing your brand? And not just for artists. I mean, you're a manager that represents producers. So even for the people out there that are trying to be producers or engineers, songwriters, what is your, what's your take on teaching people how to develop their brand? So putting in that work before you go find that manager, so know what your brand is.
Right. And then it's also, it begins with a baseline of understanding, and this is for anyone, but I'm working with a new artist now. His name is Jack Ross, that Rodney Jerkins signed to Island Records through Darkchild. And, even with him, and it even applies to me, and you guys who are listening, it really begins with a baseline of understanding of who are you, right? Who are you? What is your music? What's your vision? What are your intentions and what are your goals? So I think that, once you kind of like ask yourself those questions, then you can kind of create a plan and then create a timeline and a strategy around it. But, really, you have to be very specific, like who am I? Why am I important? Who is my core audience? You just have to ask yourself all of these questions, like if you're a musician, what is my musical style, or an artist? How do I see the world? But really just kind of dive in and just really kind of get a better idea of, what's the intention why I made this album, or why am I playing? What is my intention? Why am I doing this? And then what goals am I trying to achieve? So it's a bunch of different, and what are my strengths and weaknesses, and being very honest about that, so it's all of these things that kind of, play into your brand. But once you kind of answer those questions, it becomes so much clearer on what you need to do, because then you'll create a timeline and a strategy and then work backwards after that to really make it happen and execute it.
And what about marketing yourself in this digital age? Like using social media, creating a website. What are your thoughts on how to navigate that now? Because we are seeing people get, canceled out for things that they've posted for, years ago. We've seen comedians lose jobs. We're seeing artists get kicked off their labels for their behavior, and they're posting it on social media. So what is the proper way to utilize social media to market yourself, in your opinion?
In my opinion, obviously it's incredibly important, but it's just online is no different to me than being like, what would you do in the physical world? What do you do now? And how do you speak to people when you see them? I just think that you should have that same respect and that same kindness that you do, that how you behave in the real world, in the physical world, is how you should behave actually in the online world. I think people get a little gutsy or get, a little, I don't know, they're not the same people to me. A lot of times people are not the same people, but I think that socials are actually incredibly important. You have to continue, if you're an artist, you have to continuously engage regularly, find your rhythm, but it has to be regularly. It has to be consistent. It's all about consistency and really, just messaging. And really, you still need a website though, because you still need that nucleus to lead people to, and if they are interested in knowing more about you, then your website actually says everything about you. So, all of the good things. So maybe if it's misconstrued on socials, if they kind of revert back, then they can really get the true essence of you. So, but you certainly, obviously, socials and Instagram and Twitter are vitally important in this game. Even like when we're thinking about signing an artist, where, we look at their Instagram followers, we look and see, where, because it's also now become even like, radio. We used to look, when I first started, everything was like about radio play or streaming. But now it's, we look at, in order to get a song played on the radio, we actually look and see if there's any traction or if they have an audience, because it's really about building an audience. So you always have to be consistent about that. Yeah. So.
I think, do we have a question from online?
Susan Williams says, please share your feelings about toxicity of hustle culture, how working 24/7 leads to extreme burnout. How can we combat that and still be successful?
Yeah, I didn't have self-care when I was in my 20s. I wish I did. I wish again, like I live in Manhattan. When I first started, I lived in Queens, but then the commute became too much. And then I felt the pressure, honestly, of, like Puppy, we would have A&R meetings. I don't mean to make him sound horrible, but we would have A&R meetings at like 2 a.m. Like, so we would have to go to the studio and work and, and really kind of listen to records. A lot of that was because he was also launching a clothing line at the time. So that was the only time that he really had to really like listen to music or even kind of devote to Bad Boy, so we would have A&R and listening things. But again, I wish I would have taken time for myself and just said no, because the hustle culture, it's going to be there. It's always, it's a hustle. It's a constant hustle. Life is a hustle. So if you put yourself in that hamster wheel, in that hustle wheel, that's where you'll go. But you can step off, and don't worry about, feeling guilty that you're not working hard enough. And that's what I used to think, because I would measure myself, against sometimes a crazy person that, and you don't know what else other people have in their lives. Maybe they don't have any children, or, maybe they are doing so many other things. We don't know the reason why they're working the way they're working. But what I have learned is working long hours is not necessarily working efficiently. And, now I don't do that at all. I wish I knew that, before. And also you have to take care of yourself in the process, which I didn't do that in my, my early 20s. Even beyond that, I didn't do that until like probably the last 10 years. So I have learned that I will not do that again. You have to take care. You're only good to someone if you're good to yourself, so and that's what I've learned. And rest. You have to rest. Because, I used to fly from LA and then, arrive in New York on a red eye at 6 a.m. or 5:30 and go straight into the office and start rocking and rolling. But then, by 4 o'clock, I was drained and I just wasn't productive. Then I would just, close my office door and just try to hide under my desk and take a nap. So it just, it was terrible. I was completely inefficient.
Got to eat right, got to exercise, and get your rest. Right?
Yeah. Yes. Totally.
Is there another question, Natalie? No? Okay. So I know we're getting close to our time. There was, networking and building relationships, do's and don'ts of reaching out to industry professionals.
Do reach out. I even reach out to strangers. Like if I see like a great article, someone has gotten promoted, actually an intern that I just, that was one of my interns. I just saw that she was promoted to, I just read that today, a vice president of marketing at Interscope, I believe. And I'm like, wow. So I'll send a note to that person. Or if I even write, I also have a colleague that's, doing, that's not even doing anything with music, but, prison reform and, helping the wrongly convicted. I'll send him a note. And like, if I read an article, I'll send, I'll track them down. I will. And it's not hard to track down people now because everyone has, Instagram and social media. So you can actually, track them down, but you have to also, I'm a firm believer in face-to-face just really kind of getting yourself out there, meeting people, building relationships, and really, again, we're human. Even though we have all of this amazing technology, we're still, human beings that love social interaction, one-on-one, face-to-face. And when you think about it, like, do I want to see, my favorite artist? I don't know. Do I want to see Drake, face to face, or would I prefer a text? So, you just have to also just think of that with any kind of like interaction. I just really, I'm a huge believer in, in-person interaction, despite our technology.
Which is an interesting transition. I know I don't have a bunch of time left, so I'm going to try to squeeze this in. New technology and new legislation and all these things that are happening. So I want to start with NFTs. Are they, in your opinion, are NFTs a flash in the pan, or are they actually worth considering as a revenue stream for up-and-coming artists, or is that just for established artists? What are your thoughts?
Well, I am all for like new technology. Technology, it's innovation, right? It's fantastic. Things are changing and you got to change with it. And just, if you think about it, in the last 20 years, we've seen significant changes, in music, right? From CDs to streaming to, all of this stuff. It's just incredible. But yes, I do believe in NFTs. I'm actually building an NFT marketplace with one of my producers and my partner, Salaam Remi, now. So I totally believe in that. I also am a great proponent of, blockchain. That's, Web 3.0. That's the new thing. There was Web 1 was the internet. Web 2 was really when smartphones came and all of these socials. So now we're under Web 3 and, it's blockchain and NFTs. And it's an exciting space. And I'm learning it. I'm just learning it and I'm really excited about it. So, but yes, I do. And the reason why I also, got very involved in NFTs is really, again, as a manager, just trying to find other revenue streams and really something that, and the beauty about NFTs or blockchain, it's like bringing ownership back to the creators. That's really what it is, in a fair way, in a transparent way, and that's really why I'm in the space, because it's transparency and it's exciting.
And speaking of transparency, do you feel that potentially using blockchain technology will help fix the challenges with royalty payments as far as accuracy and maybe more timely payments going out?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's all about transparency, and the Modernization Act is really also helping. It's been a long battle, and there hasn't been transparency in the music business. Not very much. They say that there has, but no, it really hasn't. So I really do believe that blockchain will really kind of help everyone see what's fair and what's owed, and who owns what and whose copyright is, who has ownership of those copyrights. Yeah.
All right, I have one last question, and then I think we have to wrap it up. Is that right? Okay, last question, I promise. You mentioned the Music Modernization Act, and a part of that act is something called the AMP Act, which is the allocation of, or for, I forgot what I think it's allocation for music producers, something to that effect. What are you doing on your end, and how are you encouraging other people in the industry to make sure that producers and engineers are getting their credit and enforcing the letter of direction being sent so that they can get, even though it's a little nugget of a royalty, it's still important that the people working on these records are getting their credit. So what are you doing to make sure that that's happening? And how are you encouraging other people to do that?
Oh, I'm all over that. I work with amazing producers now, Rodney Jerkins and Salaam, as well as Q-Tip. So I'm really a proponent, and also our engineers. We give our engineers like, royalties. So being a manager, I not only, handle them, but I'm very adamant on, incorporating that in our producer agreements, as well as just championing that to, especially now since I have relationships with all the labels and all the legal departments, is really just making sure that all of those, dots those I's are dotted and the T's are crossed with these agreements, and also just seeing it through even with our engineers, and if they have questions, helping them, navigate this process. But yeah, it's and I call Sound Exchange directly sometimes to, on behalf of, my clients or even engineers or my friends, just really trying to help them, navigate through this process. But you have to have a strong communication with the artists, because a lot of times also when you're working in Sound Exchange, it's hard. The artist has to sign off on all of this stuff. And sometimes just, an artist is on tour or traveling or doing all of these things. They don't, but you just have to stay diligent and persistent to make sure that they actually sign off on the correct paperwork, and then also ask them to send you a copy, so then you can also send it directly to Sound Exchange instead of waiting on the record company or the other lawyers to actually send it on your behalf. So
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for your time. I know we ran a little bit long today. Please pass on to Rodney our sincere congratulations on the work he did with her and the new album. We actually have a grad that helped engineer, so shout out to Micah Petit.
Yes.
And thank you so much. We're going to have to definitely do this again because I still have a whole page of questions.
Absolutely. Anytime. I'm ready.
But thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely.
Yes, I hope I helped.
You did. You did fantastic. We appreciate it.
Thanks. Bye.
And thank you, everybody. Have a great day.